I'm going to start from the middle. Yeah, not the beginning. Not the dramatic opening with doctors and beeping machines. The middle. Because the middle was the first moment I realized that nothing in that house, my house apparently, had anything to do with me. I was standing in the kitchen in my own underwear, staring at a coffee machine that looked like the control panel of a nuclear submarine. Stainless steel, blinking lights, digital timer, some frother attachment that hissed at me like a cat when I touched it. And right next to it, a note. My handwriting. Don't forget your 8 a.m. meeting. Love you. M. M. That was me. Mark. 45 years old. Or so they said. But in my head, I was 25. Fresh out of college. Still living in a crappy apartment with a futon, a leaky faucet, and a fridge that made noises like it was dying. I turned that coffee machine around twice. Pressed a few buttons. It started vibrating like it wanted to take off. I stepped back, and I remember thinking, well, that's new. And then she walked in. The woman. My wife. The first time I saw her, and I mean really saw her, was a couple of days before that in the hospital room. I'd woken up to a ceiling that looked like every ceiling in every hospital movie ever made. That weird pale yellow, those square panels, fluorescent lights humming like cheap bugs in summer. There were wires, machines, some nurse whose name I instantly forgot. I was groggy, dry mouth, head pounding like someone had used it as a basketball. Then this man in a white coat leaned over me, smiled like I was a kid, and said, "Good morning, Mr. Willis. You been out for a bit." "Out where?" I croaked. He chuckled the kind of chuckle people do when they're about to tell you something you won't like. "Well, technically just unconscious. You hit your head. A mild traumatic brain injury, but, well, there's a bit of memory loss involved." I blinked. Memory loss? He nodded slowly. Hands in his pockets like this was the 100th time he'd done this. "It looks like you've lost your memory of, well, the last 20 years. I laughed. Like actually laughed. That dry, confused laugh you let out when someone says something that doesn't make any sense at all. 20 what? That's when he said it again. Calmly. As if repeating it would somehow make it sound more reasonable. 20 years, Mr. Willis. I thought it was a prank. Or maybe I was on some kind of reality show. I expected a camera to roll out of the closet and a guy to pop out yelling, "Gotcha!" Instead, a woman walked into the room. She looked to be in her 40s. Blonde hair, tied up in a messy bun, denim jacket, no makeup, just calm. She had this look in her eyes, tired but soft. Like she'd been here every day, waiting for me to wake up. She said, "Mark," and my stomach dropped. She said it like she knew me. Like the word meant something. Like it belonged to her. "I'm sorry," I said, still lying in that bed with the stupid blue gown that barely tied at the back. "Who are you?" Her face changed so fast, it was like watching a movie on fast forward. First relief, then confusion, then a quiet kind of hurt. She didn't cry, just took a breath. "I'm Lisa," she said softly. "Your wife." And then came the second person. A girl, maybe 16, maybe 17. Brown hair, blue hoodie, headphones around her neck. She walked in like she didn't want to be there, but had to. She stopped near the foot of the bed, looked at me, and her lips twitched like she was trying not to show anything. "That's Emma," Lisa said. "Our daughter." I stared at her. At both of them. My brain tried to process the words, but they didn't fit anywhere. Wife. Daughter. 45 years old. I felt like someone had swapped my entire life out with another man's. You know how sometimes you wake up from a weird dream and it takes you a few seconds to remember who you are, where you live, what day it is? Imagine that feeling, except it doesn't go away. Ever. The first week after leaving the hospital was a highlight reel of confusion. Lisa picked me up in a dark blue SUV that apparently was mine. I didn't recognize the dashboard, the smell, even the damn cup holders. There was a GPS program to our house, and I stared at the map like I was visiting another planet. When we pulled up, it was a nice two-story in a quiet neighborhood. White siding, neighbors walking their dogs, a flag on the porch. You know, the kind of place where people grill on weekends and pretend everything's fine. And the whole time I kept thinking, this looks like a place I wouldn't live. Not because it was bad, it just looked settled, stable, adult, and I didn't feel like any of those things. When I stepped inside, I saw pictures. A lot of pictures. Me and Lisa on a beach. Me and Emma at some amusement park. Me in an office suit shaking hands with a guy I didn't know. Every single image had my face, but none of them had me. I stood in the hallway, surrounded by 20 years of proof that I'd lived a life I didn't remember. And Lisa said, "Welcome home." I didn't sleep much that night. The bed was too big, the pillow too firm, the smell of the house too unfamiliar. I lay there staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet creak of pipes, and tried to imagine what kind of man lived here. This guy who wore button-down shirts and drank lattes and drove a sensible car. The guy wasn't me. At 3 a.m., I got up and went downstairs. Made a sandwich, or at least tried to. Turned out I now had dietary preferences I didn't remember developing. Lisa had labeled containers in the fridge. No sugar, low sodium, fiber boost. I grabbed the most rebellious thing I could find, leftover pizza. I was halfway through a cold slice when Lisa appeared in the doorway. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked. I shrugged. "Feels like I broke into someone else's house." She didn't laugh, just leaned against the doorframe, hands in the pockets of that denim jacket. "I know this is a lot," she said carefully, "but it's your house. It's our home." "Yeah," I said. "That's what they tell me." We stood there in silence for a while. The fridge hummed. A clock ticked somewhere. And for the first time, I noticed how she looked at me, like she wanted to fix something she didn't know how to fix. The next morning was round 2 with the coffee machine. The thing was built to make people feel stupid. Lisa came in, kissed me on the cheek like it was the most natural thing in the world, grabbed a mug, and operated that thing like a pro. Meanwhile, I was still standing there, pressing buttons and swearing under my breath. Emma walked in last, earbuds in, backpack over one shoulder. She opened the fridge, grabbed a yogurt, didn't look at either of us, and mumbled something that sounded like morning. I said, "Morning," but it came out like I was talking to a stranger at a bus stop. She didn't answer. Lisa shot me a quick look, not angry, not disappointed, just a look that said she didn't know how to help either. When they left, I explored the house like some weird tourist. Living room, office, garage, backyard. The garage had tools lined up like a soldier's parade. Apparently, I was into DIY stuff. There was also a guitar case in the corner, dusty. I opened it. It was my old acoustic. I hadn't touched it since college. I strummed a chord. It buzzed flat, but the feel of the wood under my fingers that I remembered, and for about 2 seconds, I wasn't standing in a stranger's garage. I was 25 again, sitting in a crappy bar in Philly, trying to get through an open mic night. I don't remember how the dream ended back then, but I sure as hell knew it didn't involve a mortgage. A few days later, Lisa took me to my office. Well, my office. It was one of those modern buildings with glass walls and way too many people wearing smartwatches. I worked, or apparently had worked, as some kind of operations manager for a logistics company, which is hilarious because the last thing I remembered before all this was bartending part-time and playing music with friends. They gave me a tour like I was the new intern. Coworkers said things like, "Hey man, great to see you back, and glad you're okay, buddy." And I smiled and nodded, not remembering a single one of them. There was this one guy, Todd, who clapped me on the back like we were best friends. He said, "You're still owing me that beer night, man." "Yeah," I said, pretending I had the slightest clue what he was talking about. "I'll get right on that." Then there was my desk. Clean, organized, laptop, family photo, calendar full of meetings. All very responsible adult. I sat down and stared at the screen like it might tell me who the hell I'd become. I won't bore you with a dozen doctor appointments, the scans, the endless cognitive exercises. Everyone kept saying, memory may or may not come back. Like it was weather. Might rain today. Might not. The thing they didn't say out loud, and what I slowly figured out, is that the hardest part wasn't not remembering. It was remembering the wrong version of myself. 25-year-old me didn't care about mortgage rates or cholesterol. He drank cheap beer on Friday nights, lived with roommates, and still believed that one day, maybe he'd play to a real crowd. 45-year-old me, the man in the photos, wore khakis and tucked in his shirt, checked emails on Sunday mornings, went to PDA meetings, bought a leaf blower. I was living in the body of a man I didn't know. Lisa tried. God, she tried. She'd tell me stories over dinner, like, "Remember when we went to Yellowstone with Emma? You almost set the tent on fire." Or, "You used to complain about that coffee machine too." She'd laugh, but the laugh was always a little brittle, like she was hoping each story would unlock something in my head. But they didn't. They were just stories about some guy named Mark who happened to look like me. Emma didn't talk much at all. I don't blame her. She was 16, and her dad came home from the hospital basically a stranger. She spent most of her time in her room with her headphones on. When I tried to talk to her, it was always awkward. Like this one night, I knocked on her door. Hey, Emma. A pause. Then, yeah, mind if I come in? Another pause. Then, I guess. Her room was exactly what you'd expect from a teenage girl. Posters, fairy lights, piles of clothes she swore weren't dirty. She was sitting at her desk, scrolling on her phone. I said, I know this is weird. She didn't look at me. Yeah, I'm trying. She nodded without lifting her eyes. Okay, that's the thing about teenagers. They can destroy you with one word. A couple of weeks in, I found my old band t-shirt in the back of the closet. Faded black, torn at the collar. I put it on, and for the first time, I felt like me again. 25-year-old me. The one with no wife, no kid, no middle management job. When Lisa saw me in it, she froze for a second. Then she smiled. I haven't seen that in years, she said. I like this one. I said, not sure what else to say. You used to wear it everywhere, she added. Until it basically disintegrated. I nodded. For a brief moment, I caught a flicker of something in her eyes, like she saw the man she'd met all those years ago. And I wondered, what did she fall in love with back then? Was it this version of me, or the one I'd become? Work was strange. My coworkers acted like nothing had changed. They'd gossip around the coffee machine, invite me to lunches, talk about clients and quarterly goals. I just nodded a lot. Todd kept telling the same story about some Christmas party where, apparently, I danced on a table. I pretended to laugh every time. One day, my boss, a woman named Karen, yes, I know it's too on the nose, but that's her actual name, called me into her office. Mark, she said, crossing her legs in that corporate power pose. I'm glad you're back, but I need to ask, are you up to speed? Working on it, I said. I understand this is unusual, she continued, but we can't keep covering indefinitely. I wanted to tell her that I didn't even remember working here, that I didn't care about supply chain efficiency, that I barely remember my own face in the mirror. Instead, I said, I'll get there. She nodded, but I saw it in her eyes. She didn't believe it. Not really. The real punch came a month later. I was in the attic digging through boxes when I found it, a dusty case with a pile of old notebooks and set lists. My songs, my handwriting, lyrics I wrote when I still believed music could be something more than a hobby. And tucked between the pages was an old photo of me and my bandmates. Laughing, drunk, stupid, alive. I stared at that photo for a long time. Then I went downstairs, put on the shirt again, grabbed the guitar from the garage, and started playing. It was rough. My fingers were stiff, the strings out of tune. But it felt right, like breathing after holding it in too long. Lisa came home and heard me. She stood in the doorway, watching. You haven't played in years, she said. I looked up. Yeah, well, guess I missed it. She walked over slowly. You stopped after, well, life got busy. Busy, I repeated. She sat down next to me. Not too close, just enough to listen. I played a bit more. The chords came back one by one. And for a moment, I wasn't this stranger in my own life. I was me again. But here's the thing about trying to rebuild a life you don't remember. Everyone around you remembers it. And that means every move you make is measured against a man you can't compete with. I wasn't the same husband Lisa married. I wasn't the same dad Emma grew up with. I wasn't the same employee who signed those contracts. I was a 25-year-old in a 45-year-old shell, trying to fake his way through a life that never belonged to him. It started small, little cracks. Lisa asking me why I didn't remember their anniversary dinner at some fancy restaurant. Emma looking at me like she wanted her dad back, not this imposter who shared his face. Todd joking about inside stuff I couldn't follow. And me getting quieter each day. One night, Lisa and I were sitting on the porch. Crickets, warm air, a glass of water in my hand. She said, "Do you feel anything for me?" I didn't answer right away, because the truth is I didn't know. I liked her. She was kind, strong, beautiful. In that way, people become beautiful when they've lived real lives. But love? I couldn't remember falling in love with her. I couldn't even remember meeting her. She looked down at her hands. I know it's not your fault, but it feels like I lost you too. I said quietly, maybe we both did. Emma was harder to read. She didn't talk about it much, but I could see it in how she moved around me. Like I was a ghost. Still there, but not really. One afternoon, I tried to drive her to school. Halfway there, I missed a turn, apparently one I'd made every day for years. She sighed. That teenage sigh that says you're an idiot. And it hit me how much she'd been forced to grow up in those weeks. When she got out of the car, she said, "You're not him." I froze. "What? You're not my dad," she said, not looking at me. "Not really." Then she shut the door and walked away. That night, I sat in the kitchen again. Same pizza, same fridge hum, same silence. Lisa came downstairs. She didn't say anything at first, just sat across from me. Finally, "She's hurting too." "I know," I said. "She doesn't hate you," she added. "She's just trying to figure out how to love a stranger." There's this thing they don't tell you about losing 20 years. People keep expecting you to catch up, as if you can just download the life you lost like a software update. They show you photos, tell stories, try to help. But no matter how much they remind you of who you were, you're still someone else. I try to be the man in those photos. I wore the clothes, went to work, sat at the dinner table, asked about him his day. But the whole time, I felt like an actor reading lines from script I didn't write. Then something changed. I got a message from an old college friend. Jake. He'd heard about the accident. We met at a diner near the interstate. One of those places with bad coffee and pancakes that taste like cardboard, but in a comforting way. He slid into the booth, looked me over, and said, "Damn, you look like a responsible adult." "Don't rub it in," I said. He laughed. "Still got that mouth on you." "Good." We talked for hours. He told me about the stupid things we used to do. The band. The road trips. The way I swore I'd never end up in a cubicle. And for the first time in months, I felt seen. Not as 45-year-old Mark, but as me. "Man," Jake said, stirring his coffee, "you used to say you'd rather die broke with a guitar in your hand than rich in a suit." "Yeah," I said. "Seems I picked the suit." He grinned. "Life's funny like that." When I got home that night, Lisa was waiting. She asked where I'd been. I told her the truth, and she smiled. Not a happy smile, but a soft one. "I'm glad," she said. "You need pieces of you back." The choice wasn't clear-cut. It never is. I had a family, a house, a career, all built by a man I used to be. But I wasn't that man anymore. And the question became, do I try to become him again? Or do I build something new? I started playing more. Guitar, open mic nights, nothing big. Lisa came once. Sat in the back, quiet, smiling. Emma didn't. Not yet. But one night, she stood in the hallway, listening to me play. She didn't say anything, but she didn't walk away either. At work, I started being honest. Told Karen I might not be up to speed the way she wanted. She didn't love that, but she respected it. Todd still invited me for beers. I actually went. Lisa and I didn't magically fix everything. It wasn't some movie. Some nights we barely talked. Some nights we did. But slowly, something real began to grow between us. Not a memory, but a new connection. And Emma. One morning, she sat next to me at breakfast and said, "Can you teach me that song you were playing yesterday?" I looked up surprised. "Yeah, sure." She shrugged like it was no big deal, but it's been a year since I woke up in that hospital bed. I haven't recovered those lost 20 years, and I don't think I ever will. But maybe that's okay, because I finally understood something. That man in the photos, he was me, and I'm him. Just different chapters, different versions. I don't have to be exactly who he was, but I also don't have to throw it all away. I've got a wife who stayed, a daughter who's slowly letting me back in, a guitar that still remembers my hands, a job I may or may not keep forever, a future I get to choose this time. If you told me a year ago that I'd wake up at 45 with no memory of the last 20 years, I'd have laughed. Now I just make coffee, mess it up, fix it, live the day, learn again. I'm not who I was. I'm not who I'll be. I'm just me. And honestly, that's enough.